Thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza. And for those of you that have been listening, sending in questions and comments, thank you so much. Please continue to help spread the word that this show brings on special guests that can inspire, educate, and in some cases entertain, while bringing answers and options to making our lives happier, healthier, and more successful. And remember, if you can't listen live, go to our website at answers.network and browse through a variety of heartfelt and enlightening topics. I am confident that there will be something that you will find that will bring greater joy, easy for me to say, that will bring greater joy to your lives and to your loved ones. Now, I also have a favor to ask. Please forward one of our shows to your social media group or to someone you know who can benefit from a particular subject. This is one powerful way that we can make a positive influence in the world together. Now, I really appreciate the questions that we get, and we normally get them for our guests. This one came in, and this one appears to be for me in the sense that this one read, I was listening to one of your past shows, and the guest said that laughter heals. It says, I love how positive your show is, but I don't subscribe to the fake it till you make it theory. And unfortunately, with all that our family has gone through the last couple of years, and then in parentheses, loss of our business, loss of a grandparent, and general depression, I'm not following how laughter helps. What am I missing? Well, first, I'm sorry that you're going through everything that you're going through, and you're certainly not alone. The guest, I believe that the guest that you're referring to was comedian Craig Shoemaker, because he has a nonprofit that is called the Laughter Heals Foundation. And it is a place where you can go and get help. And so that might be a place to go as well to see if they can provide some help for some of the things that you're going through. But I also wanted to be able to answer your question, which is, how does it help? How does it heal? And I know that what you've gone through is not a laughing matter, but the Mayo Clinic has done studies on laughter, and they reported the following 6 health benefits of laughter. One was reduces blood pressure, which in turn can reduce your blood sugar. It reduces your stress hormones. It helps relax muscles, helps strengthen your immune system, which helps it fight disease, virus, infection. It releases endorphins that can reduce pain, and it sparks social connection and paves the way for healthy friendships, all of which are tied to greater health, happiness, and longevity, which can also be said about what our guest today brings us. Julie Wald is the founder, CEO, and Chief Wellness Officer at Namaste, New York, whose mission is to help people live healthier, happier lives. And since 2003, Namaste has been consulting, curating, and delivering personalized fitness and wellness solutions for individuals, families, and organizations. With over 25 years of experience as a clinical social worker, yoga and meditation teacher, a Thai body worker, and Reiki master, Julie has advised and coached a clientele of high-performing business leaders and celebrities. With an unwavering commitment to service that has always been central to Julie's personal ethos, in addition to serving Namaste clients, Namaste delivers complimentary wellness treatments to underserved schools, hospitals, and community organizations. Julie, welcome to Answers Network.
Thank you so much, Alan. I'm really delighted to be here.
Now, I've had the pleasure of reading your book, and if you can tell us a little bit about how you discovered the path of inner wealth, which is also the title of the new book.
Absolutely. One quick note, I realized, we had arranged this conversation a little while back, and just within the last few weeks, my company, by the way, changed its name just to
Oh,
just to be extra confusing to everybody. Instead of Namaste New York, it is now called Golden. So that's just a little side note, really
okay.
recent update on my end.
All right.
In terms of how I discovered inner wealth or this concept, I think I can speak to that from a few different angles, one of which is kind of from my own perspective of cultivating my own sense of inner wealth, and another is in my work with so many really high performing individuals and organizations and guiding others towards discovering their own inner wealth, so to speak. So, my journey started off as a clinical social worker. I was in my early 20s working in New York City, working with some of the most disenfranchised mentally ill populations in the
Mhm.
country as a clinical social worker, and I was very stressed. I was holding a lot. I was very concerned about my clients. And at the time, I realized that I needed a toolkit. I needed some resources personally to figure out how to manage my stress. And at that point,
Mhm.
I started learning meditation. I started learning breath work. I took many classes in yoga. I started studying Eastern philosophy. And this became a wonderful, ever evolving toolkit for me to support myself, give me a sense of having resources to help manage my stress, and ultimately pave the way to enabling me to work with some just extraordinary leaders through the years and helping them to manage stress and develop a toolkit to support their mental and physical health and well-being. So outer wealth is when we have a lot of external resources. We have,
Sure.
maybe we have money, maybe we have other things that money can buy, so to speak. And inner wealth is really about those internal resources, those things that money can't buy, but really what are essential components to mental health and well-being and really a life well lived, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think it's so important. And it actually reminded. I was just speaking with a young person that we were working with, and we were actually transporting them to a specialized program to deal with some of the issues that they were having. And and this young person comes from a very wealthy family, and looking at it as a financial wealth. And even at 16 years old, uh, this young person said, because we were talking about how they have everything, and they were saying, yeah, we live in this huge house, and we have all of these things, and yet I feel empty.
Mhm.
And this was coming from a 16-year-old that was realizing that everything that their parents had given them, and yet inside they felt empty. So that was one of the things that I thought of. And it was interesting because I was reading your book, getting prepared for this show at the same time in which I was working with this young person. And I thought, wow, that says it in one simple thing coming from a 16-year-old.
Absolutely. It's a really common phenomenon. In fact, back when I was working as a social worker, I was also moonlighting as a yoga and meditation teacher. And I happened to be working with some of the most high performing, wealthiest individuals in the world at the time, with celebrities and captains of industry as a yoga and meditation teacher. And what was really fascinating to me is I was living in on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and I would take the subway up to the Bronx to do my social work job all day, where again, I was working with people who had very little on a material level. And then I would come down to the Upper East Side after work and teach yoga and meditation on Fifth Avenue and Park Avenue to people who were wonderful, who I cared
Mhm.
and loved for very much. But what was interesting and what I noticed at that time is that the people who had the wealth, the external wealth, were really no happier than
Right.
the people who I was dealing with who had almost nothing. And even kind of on the other side of the coin, the people who had very little from a financial perspective were actually forced to cultivate more internal resources, that sense of being able to access a feeling of joy, or the love and feeling of gratitude for small things, or the ability to embrace just a connection with another person that brought such good feeling to that human being. And they were really forced to rely on those inner resources for their own mental and physical health and well-being. Whereas oftentimes I found that the people who had so much on a material level were kind of searching and searching and searching for the answers somehow outside of themselves, instead of realizing that, maybe the real abundance was somewhere inside of them, and that discovering that could be a path to a greater sense of happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah, that actually made me think of another story of working with another young person. But in this particular case, we were taking them to a specialized program that was in the Dominican Republic, and it was actually a very beautiful place. It was up on a mountain, but we had to fly in. We landed there, and then to drive up there, we drove past a dirt lot. So it was supposed to be a soccer field, but it was dirt. It was just dirt and rocks and everything else. And the kids were out there running and playing soccer, and they're laughing, and they're just having this great time. And they have literally nothing compared to this young person that I'm taking up to the program, whose parents are paying whatever, $10,000 a month for them to go to this specialized school. And the young person that was with me was so incredibly unhappy. And, and it drives home that same point that you're talking about is that, it is what we're making happen inside. And if we get too wrapped up in focusing on trying to gather all of this wealth, it's not going to make us any happier. And in some cases may do just the opposite.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, one of the things you talk about in your book, and if you can share with our listeners and viewers, is you talk about the 4 pillars of self-care, and that they're essential to building this inner wealth.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I discovered, early on in my work was that there were seemingly 4 major ingredients. I mean, there's many other ingredients, and there's all kinds of models for thinking about wellness and self-care, but there were 4 that really stood out to me, which were movement, stillness, connection, and nourishment. So movement, stillness, connection, and nourishment, that these are the 4 major ingredients that if we throw them into the recipe, that the recipe of our lives are going to just taste exponentially sweeter and more wholesome with these ingredients. So, if you think about, for anybody who's a parent, if you can think about what are the ingredients necessary to enable a newborn baby to thrive. That baby needs tummy time. They need exercise. They need plenty of sleep. They need their naps. They need plenty of mashed sweet potatoes and bananas and avocados and all that good stuff. They need nourishment. They need to be in nature, which is also nourishing. They need to hear music. They need to be exposed to art and color and visual nourishment and stimulation. And of course, they need connection. They need to be held. They need skin-to-skin contact. They need to be talked to. They need that sense of connection with the people around them. And barring any other major developmental issues or disabilities or physical health issues, that baby who has those 4 ingredients will thrive. And we as adults are really no different. We are just big babies. And I think we forget that, you know, these ingredients are essential, and not unlike a baby, without one or more of them, we will get cranky. We will get sick, right? Nobody wants to be with a
Mm-hmm.
baby who didn't sleep enough the night before. Nobody wants to be with a baby who's eating sugar all day long. Nobody, those kids are not fun to hang out with. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we start to understand that, it really can help inform the basics. There's so much in life that we don't have control over, right? So many things are happening, especially in our world today. It's more than ever feels
Yeah.
like an overwhelming environment. And yet, yet there are things that we do have control over. So if we can harness those things that we can control and make sure that those ingredients are in place and that we're nurturing ourselves, like, those are internal resources. The ability to know that if I move to this morning, if I take a walk, it will make me feel great. The understanding that if I honor my sleep, if I meditate, if I take a few deep breaths, if I bring some stillness into my day, that will be a balancing force. These are not things that money can buy, right? That if I nourish myself with whole foods, if I eat foods that come from the earth, that don't come from a wrapper or a factory, if I nourish myself with laughter, you mentioned it at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
this session. If I find ways to fill my tank, that will be an essential component of my well-being. And lastly, if I can tap into authentic connection, if I can recognize, am I filling up on junk food connection, meaning, social media and just sort of one-dimensional interactions, or am I finding, ways to have meaningful conversations, to speak my mind, to speak my heart, to be in person with people if I'm able to do that? How am I creating enough connection? Physical touch down regulates the nervous system. Am I hugging the people that I can hug? Am I getting enough support? Human beings are really built as pack animals. We
Mm-hmm.
naturally downregulate our nervous system when we're in the company of others. There's safety in numbers, so to speak. So isolation can really impact us in a negative way. So that's sort of a quick overview of the movement, stillness, connection, and nourishment ingredients. And I think what's interesting is that oftentimes in my experience, I'll meet people who think they're taking care of themselves because either they're getting on their Peloton every day, or, they're eating a lot of kale, or they're doing whatever they're doing. And they think, okay, therefore I'm taking care of myself. But oftentimes there are real blind spots. It's, when we realize that we haven't had meaningful connection or intimacy, or when we realize that, we're nourished by something like live music, or, being in a museum, or, being in the middle of a forest, or being at the beach. And that those things are so essential, and that we may think we're taking care of ourselves, but there are these blind spots that can be very depleting.
Well, over the last couple of years, we've had a media and a government that is pushed in just the opposite direction in just about everything that you've said. So how can we get our audience to approach, the goals without fear, and, and be able to approach it instead with like curiosity and joy, and not, because I think that a lot of people, you were mentioning how they're doing one or two things, but they're not getting it. But I think that they're also not getting the support from the outside of, yes, that's the right thing. Yes, keep doing that. Instead, we're getting this divisiveness and negativity, and trying to, stay in your house, be afraid. So what are some of the things that you think that we can help get people to look more inward and really focus on the things that they need for themselves and their family?
Absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, it's about doing a bit of a self-assessment, right? Looking
Hmm.
at our lives and saying, okay, which categories do I have covered here? Am I getting enough movement? Am I getting enough stillness, which could be sleep or other reflective quiet practices? Am I getting enough nourishment? What does that look like? How is my connection? So just taking some time, maybe with a pen and a piece of paper, to reflect on these different components, where we're getting these ingredients in our lives. And then oftentimes, just from doing that, we'll start to see kind of where the biggest opportunities are for enhancement. Let's just call it, right? So
Hmm.
maybe we realize, okay, I'm moving consistently. I'm getting enough sleep. I'm, I'm eating as healthy as I'm ever going to eat, but I really do feel like I haven't double clicked, so to speak, on some of the important relationships. There are friends that I care
Right.
about that I haven't spent time with, or, I'm losing touch with people because I'm wasting time binge watching Netflix all night long and not catching up on the phone with an old friend. And so,
Hmm.
looking at where the sticky spots are for us, or those areas of opportunity, or the weakest links in our self-care, and with love, with compassion, not in sort of a self-judgmental I am bad kind of framework, but ooh, okay, there's an opportunity here. How can I love myself, support myself by bringing a little more of whatever pillar it might be in your life? And then I'm an advocate for baby steps, right? So someone who may not get enough, feel like they're getting enough movement or getting enough exercise, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to now go to the gym every day for 45 minutes or an hour,
I'm going to go run a marathon.
right. Maybe
Yeah.
it's something really, really small, like I'm going to
Yeah.
take the steps at work instead of the elevator, or I'm going to, just take a walk to go to my mailbox every day. And, if I feel like walking up and down the block or the street, I'm going to add on to that. And I'm going to just take a 10 to 15-minute movement break, at lunchtime, in the middle of the day, whatever that might be. So finding really small but meaningful, consistent opportunities to bring these different ingredients into our lives. And small and consistent are really the key words here, right? So, really small, actionable behaviors that fit into these pillars that we can actually commit to doing on a daily basis. Because one of the best things that we can do for our self care, and therefore for our mental health and well-being, is to create habitually healthy behaviors that we default to, that are healthy, right? Like I wouldn't think to do anything other than take a walk in the morning, because that's just what I do every morning. It's not because I have such extraordinary willpower, but it's because I've developed a healthy habit in that area, and it's habitual. I've created automaticity with it. But I didn't do it by biting off more than I could chew. I did it by really small, meaningful practices that are too small to even have an excuse not to do, that I do every single day.
Now, what can we do in regards to finding maybe the root cause of some of the things? Because I know that in many situations people will, um, you know, or even I'll talk to them about something and they'll go, I know, well, you should, if you do this and this and this, I know, and then go right back to the same thing, which tells me that there's a root cause that maybe they need to see somebody or whatever. But what's one of the best ways that maybe if somebody who isn't comfortable with seeing someone, that can help find their own root cause to deal with that, if they know that they keep going back to the same issue or the same problem that keeps them from doing those things that they know that they should be doing?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple ways to think about this. I think there's understanding that we all have kind of limiting beliefs about what we're capable of. And those limiting beliefs can really drive our behavior. So, maybe I have a limiting belief, which is that I don't have the time or the money to eat healthfully, right? Like it's just too expensive. It takes too much time to cook and things like that. That's a belief system that we can then kind of back everything into. Whereas, there are a lot of efficient ways to problem solve those obstacles. And so understanding, what is the belief that's driving my behavior? I have too much work to do to exercise in the morning, or we have a million ideas,
Excuses.
excuses. I'm not. I'm a horrible meditator and I can't sit still. Late at night is the only time that I, can really relax and watch television. And so I deprioritize my sleep so I can have that feeling of some downtime, right? So understand kind of where are the belief systems that are driving the choices that we're making behaviorally, and seeing if we might be able to reframe or rework some of those, some of those ideas, and create a more positive potential in terms of that specific area of self-care. I think it's one thing to think about those limiting beliefs and how to rework them and understanding what our limiting beliefs are. And then I think it's another way to attack this is to actually understand that most people who behave healthfully, like we all know that person who, they exercise every day, they meditate every day, they eat so healthy, they seem like they have, they're always seemingly having these wonderful dinner parties or something like that. And usually people that take really good care of themselves do so out of habit, not because they're so disciplined or so much better than we are. It's because they've actually developed behavior patterns that are like brushing their teeth. They're like grabbing your phone when you're getting in the car. You don't even think about it. It doesn't require effort because they've created automaticity. And so, there is something to be said for, and I know this phrase was used at the beginning of your call with that question, sort of a fake it till you make it mindset, where you actually work with behavior modification as a front line to addressing some of these obstacles, and you do something very, very small. So for example, for somebody who wants to start meditating, maybe that feels like it's going to be very challenging. So instead, perhaps you think about taking one deep, full breath the first thing when you wake up in the morning, a full inhalation and a full exhalation before you pick up your phone, before you do anything, just like one moment to find that stillness, to find that grounding. If you start doing that every single morning, deep full inhalation, a deep full exhalation, it's hard to come up with an excuse as to why you can't do that. And so all of a sudden, what you start to realize day after day after day is that it starts to feel strange not to do that. Then all of a sudden, when you wake up and you just dive right into Facebook or, your email or whatever it might be, that something feels like it's missing, that you didn't take that one full deep breath. And so the more we can repeat very small incremental self-care habits and behaviors, the more natural they become, where they require zero effort to live healthfully.
Our guest is Julie Wald. We are talking about her book, Inner Wealth: How Wellness Heals, Nurtures, and Optimizes Ultra Successful People. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And when we come back, Julie, I've got a question that has been sent in that it asks how some of these things apply for young mothers. So for everybody, stay with us. You're listening to Answers Network.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585, or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
And we're back. My guest is Julie Wald. We are talking about her book, Inner Wealth. And when we went to break, there's a question that has come in from a listener. Again, I want to thank those that take the time to send in questions or comments. I want you to know we really appreciate them. This one reads, I am anxious to receive your book. My daughter has been overwhelmed trying to keep her small business alive and caring for her two daughters who are ages 3 and 5. Taking time for herself is always last on the long list of responsibilities that fill her days. My hope is that she will find guidance in creating a self-care plan that you speak of. What advice do you give young mothers such as my daughter? And this is from Agatha in Louisiana.
Oh, Agatha, I love that question. I was a young mother myself a little ways back. I'm now a mother of teenagers, but can relate personally and professionally to that challenge. I think that concept that I just mentioned about really small behaviors, really tiny things that we can do consistently that actually can be life-changing. And it's almost like, you know how sometimes in a recipe, it'll say, put a little bit of vanilla in or something like that. And it doesn't seem like you're not gonna be able to taste the vanilla in the chocolate chip cookies. It doesn't really, it's just a little bit. Yet if you leave out that if you leave out that ingredient, somehow it all just doesn't work.
It's just different, right?
It's different. And it's almost like, self-care may not be, the chocolate chips or the dough, but it's like the vanilla that goes into the recipe when you're a young mother that kind of enables everything else to come together. And looking at, for your daughter, looking at these 4 pillars and understanding on a daily basis, just like I'm sure she's consciously or unconsciously doing for her children. How does she work in really small opportunities for movement, right? It might be something as simple as, while her coffee's brewing in the morning, she, puts a foot up on the kitchen counter and stretches, or, takes a couple of deep breaths in that moment. But finding existing activities that happen every day. So chances are, for example, she puts her kids to bed at night, right? Or at least some of the time that she's doing that bedtime routine. One of the things that I used to do when my kids were little at bedtime routine or during nighttime to feel that sense of connection pillar was to first cuddle with my children, because by nature of the fact that, our nervous systems respond to that physical touch, it actually goes both ways. Our kids feel safer when we're touching them, but actually for us as moms to experience that touch is also very grounding to our nervous system. To find, small parts of that routine of motherhood where she can insert, that deep breath, that walk with the stroller to the mailbox and back, and just being more mindful and more present and more intentional around these little small self-care nuggets can be life-changing, even though it's, nobody's running a marathon and nobody's going to be, doing day-long meditation retreats or, sleeping 9 or 10 hours a night. That doesn't really happen in that chapter, but we can, with intention and with consciousness and mindfulness, really start to feel like our cup is being filled up, like our sense of inner resource or inner wealth is intact, and that we can call on those resources amidst a very, very busy time. So yeah, I think shrinking it down to be really small and thinking about doing something really consistently are what I would say are the two most important ideas for a young mom. And it's not going to look the way it used to look before you had kids, and that's okay.
How important do you think gratitude is to this process?
I love that question. Gratitude is just an essential component to a self-care plan. I consider it to really be, I consider it to be a nourishment practice. I consider it to be a connection practice. I consider it to be a stillness practice. It can really be any one of those things. And this is the unique thing about the 4 pillars, is that things don't fit squarely under one pillar. There's a lot of interconnection and interdependence between these pillars. But in terms of gratitude, it's such a simple meditation practice that can be grounding each and every day in some way, shape, or form, even if it's as simple as feeling gratitude for the delicious cup of coffee that we're drinking in the morning. Or, I have a practice personally, I call it first thought, best thought. And I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do in the morning is meditate. But the first thing I do before I meditate is I think of something that I'm grateful for. And it grounds my entire day in that simple intention, that awareness. So before I look at my phone, I don't allow myself to look at my phone until after this practice has happened. I literally sit up in bed. If I get out of bed, forget about it. Like, I'll get too distracted by a million other things that need to happen. And so one thing, God willing, I know will happen every day is that I'll wake up. And so if I stack my gratitude practice directly on top of my waking up practice, then I know that I will have that moment of gratitude each and every day to start my day. And it definitely is deeply supportive.
And while we're on meditation, because when you mentioned it before, I thought of this. When you were talking about baby steps, what's your thought on apps for meditation? Because I have some, and I usually ask other people if they have one. My favorite meditation is still without an app, because my voice in my head is the one that I seem to relate to the best than somebody else's. But I still use it from time to time. And I'm wondering, again, for those people that are struggling with it, what's your thoughts on how valuable that can be?
Absolutely. I think apps can be wonderful. I don't think they're always perfect for reasons, which that, it is sort of most ideal to have this be like a fully unplugged experience and something that you're doing in your own body, in your own mind, with yourself. And many meditations are very, very simple. And so it's not necessarily something you need an app for. However, I do think that there are some amazing teachers out there who have incredible, inspirational, wonderfully grounding practices on many of the apps. And so I like your approach, Alan. I'm a fan of a hybrid of really allowing myself to benefit from all the incredible content that's out there in terms of meditation, but also to understand that the practice, if I can be in my own skin with myself, following my breath or working with a mantra or an affirmation, that is ultimately something that I can take with me at any time. I need nothing for. I can do it, when I don't have my phone on me. I can wake up in the middle of the night and if I need to get back to sleep, instead of finding my phone and fiddling with my phone, that I can put myself back to sleep. And so I would say that I'm sort of a middle path person when it comes to that idea. I don't think apps are everything, but I think they can be wonderful. And I certainly think that taking advantage of them, if we're needing that extra inspiration from some of the great teachers out there, is well worth it.
Good. I think we're pretty similar in regards to that. Now, you also touch on the book, because when we've talked a lot about what we can do for ourselves. Okay, here's what we need to do. And it's more of a meditation type of thing. But you talk about the importance of community being a critical part of our journey to inner wealth. Share a little bit of that with our audience, if you could.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, humans are pack animals. We need each other. We feel safer when we're together. If you think about it, if you're in the middle of, the desert or the forest in primitive times by yourself, that wasn't very safe. You were going to be better off with other people. If you were with your tribe, you were going to be safer than if you were not with your tribe. And we live in this culture where, we're able to function without our tribe, or we think we can function without our people. But the truth is that it's confusing to the animal parts of our humanness to not have that sense of social connection. There's been research done that has found that people with more diverse social networks, who are hooked into community, who, for example, maybe go to a religious organization, a church or a temple where there's people of all different ages that they see on a regular basis, or, other people within, community centers or a local YMCA, or, different types of relationships that bring such richness and a sense of safety and security to our lives, and make us feel, make us feel most human, which is a good feeling. And so I think that, especially during this pandemic, obviously connection has been a challenge for people. And I think we're all starting to notice that when we spend time with other people and we're coming out of the woodworks and finding ways to be together, that it really changes our mood. It really can change the way we feel. And I just can't emphasize enough how important that is to us as human animals.
Yeah, in fact, there's also some information coming out now that those countries that have less television, less electronic interaction, are the ones that have had less problems with this whole COVID pandemic, and also less problems coming out of it, because they're not having as many of the social problems that a lot of us that we're told to go in and then just watch what people tell you, as opposed to interacting with the people that you know and love, or as you said, the ones that are your own tribe. So there's so much out there that if people will recognize the fact that, getting out there with people is the answer, and keep doing it.
It's a source of so much joy. And just to go back, to take it full circle back to the beginning of our conversation, when I was talking about those two demographics of people, the people who lived up in the Bronx that I was working with as a social worker, and then these very successful clients that I had, one of those gifts that the happiest people across the board had was that ability to access a sense of authentic connection to other people. It's like a fountain of connection, of joy that happens when we can tap into that connection. So the people that would meet me in a way that was really connected and dialed in, that you could see that they were looking to connect to the people around them, those people naturally found themselves in more elevated moods and, feeling not only like people were there for them, but when we are there for other people, when we show up in service of other people, when we can be supportive of other people, it gives us a purpose. It gives us a reason to wake up in the morning. It gives us a reason to live. And from a mental health perspective, helping other people is one of the most powerful things that we can do to mitigate around issues of depression and anxiety, which is, as I'm sure just at an all-time high at the moment.
Well, if we didn't have another question, that would have been a perfect place to end on, because that was so perfectly said. Thank you. This question reads, I just visited your Hey, It Is Golden website to learn more about your work. Having taught Reiki for 10 years, I found a really wonderful article there entitled Reiki for Pandemic Anxiety. I feel that your book will make great gifts for my clients and friends who need a broader perspective and more tools to get through these uncertain times that, unfortunately, I believe are not close to being over, given the anticipated monetary issues and other stressful international events taking place. Thank you so much for putting all of the pieces together so beautifully. And this is from Tanya in New Mexico.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you, Tanya. And I love that you're a Reiki practitioner. Reiki was one of the tools that I discovered very, very early on. For those of you who aren't familiar, Reiki is an energy healing modality. And finding a local Reiki practitioner is a great place to start in terms of exploring what that means, because I know it's a little confusing and esoteric sounding perhaps, but Reiki was one of those first tools that I developed as a young woman, dealing with my own set of challenges, physical and mental at the time, where I felt like I had an inner resource, an inner tool. And I used to do Reiki not only on other people, but on myself. And it was a hugely healing practice for me. So I'm so glad you're out there doing that work.
So we're just about out of time, but I just had a quick Reiki story, in the sense that I went to a Reiki practitioner that actually came to your home with his table. And you mentioned something earlier. He took two things and combined them. That was probably the most unique thing ever, but it was great. He brought warm, fresh-made, homemade chocolate chip cookies.
Ooh.
and he would lay you on the table and he would give you a chocolate chip cookie while he worked. It was so great.
That's
and
so great. Reiki.
Yeah. So if you're still out there, keep it up. But anyway, thank you so much. And again, for everybody out there, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you or to get the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So check out our website, which is heyitsgolden.com. You can email me directly, julie@heyitsgolden.com. My book is available on Amazon. It's called Inner Wealth: How Wellness Heals, Nurtures, and Optimizes Ultra Successful People. It's good for all people. And yeah, I welcome any and all connection. And it's really just been a joy and a pleasure to speak with you, Alan. Thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure, Julie. Thank you so much. And not for just coming on the show, but for writing this book and for doing the things that you do to help make this world a better place. Thank you. Now, for everybody out there, be with us next week when we are joined by Ryan Folan, author of Ditch the Act, Reveal the Surprising Power of the Real You for Greater Success. And please, for everybody out there, visit our archives of past interviews at answers.network, or just subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Rumble, Spreaker, and so many more. And spread the word. Something I mentioned earlier in regards to, some of the media that's out there. There's so many guests now that we've had on that are experts. I just listened to a podcast where a renowned scientist said that specializes in the brain, and he was asked to list the top 10 things that people need to do right now to improve their overall mental and physical happiness. And on that list was turn off the television and the negativity and divisiveness that's being put out there, and meet with more people that you know that are part of your tribe. Talk to more people that are positive, that are wanting to make your life better. And so now we have scientists saying that you need to help this show, and if you want to do something positive for other people, pass that information on to them. And for everybody out there, call a loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate them. For everybody out there, be good human beings and be with us next week on Answers Network.
Hello, I'm Marty Cove. You might remember me from roles such as Sensei in the Karate Kid films. I've done over 100 films and countless stunts in my career, and I've always given 100%. With the damage done to my body over time, I needed to find relief from my chronic pain. My passion for health and fitness drove me to find a natural way to combat muscle pain. Teaming up with doctors, detectives, and a compounding pharmacist, we've created Marty's Cobra Cove Ultra Strength CBD Cream. It's the only thing that has been strong enough to knock out my pain, and fast. Honestly, you may have tried the rest, but it's time to try the best. It's legal, it's safe, and 100% effective. Show your pain, no mercy. Go to www.martyscobracove.com.
You're listening to Answers Network with Alan Cardoza, only on LA Talk Radio.